The problem with living on an island is it's very easy to get an invasive species of animal land and cause havoc. Well, today we're going to look at the problem with Australia and the bunny rabbits.
Rabbits. For nearly 2 centuries, Australia has been waging a war against these small, nocturnal vegetarians.
And you know how quickly they, what do they say? Mating like rabbits. They do it a lot and they spread very quickly.
These Lands Department teams are working in complete unison with the farmers of the district, and in doing so, play an important part in this all-out war on the rabbit.
We've poisoned them on the ground and from the air.
The poisoned bait is loaded onto an aircraft, one of 11 that's being used in the campaign.
If you're poisoning rabbits from the air and on the land, what else are you poisoning? That doesn't seem a very good method, because other things might eat that poison.
Bait will be dropped on inaccessible areas.
Their underground homes have been exploded and bulldozed. And we've infected them with deadly viruses. Still, they remain our most widespread and destructive pest, inhabiting around 70% of the continent, impacting on more than 300 species of native plants and animals, and costing more than $200 million every year in lost production.
That's a lot.
Domesticated rabbits arrived with the first fleet, but pioneer pastoralist Thomas Austin is blamed for introducing wild rabbits. In 1859, he shipped 24 of them from England for hunting on his property Barwon Park near Geelong.
We're releasing the rabbits on Christmas Day, and we shall go out and hopefully shoot them all.
I guess he was doing what it seemed like a good idea at the time. He was doing what he thought was right, and up until then, I mean, rabbits had been here since 1788. They'd never really taken off, so his worries were probably, are these rabbits going to survive?
More than survive, they thrived. In 1866, more than 14,000 rabbits were bagged during one of Austin's regular hunts.
That's the thing though, they breed so quickly. They're like rats, aren't they? They breed so quickly. This is why you've got to be so careful if you have them as pets. Rabbits, quite often you don't often have individual rabbits. You have multiple, and you've got to be very careful to make sure you've got a boy and a boy, or a girl, and not one of each, because yeah, as a child, we had rabbits and they turned out to be different sex, and we realised that they had little bunny rabbits.
So, in just 7 years, 24 rabbits had become more than 14,000 here at Barwon Park, Austin's home. And local landholders were beginning to complain bitterly that rabbits were taking over their pastoral properties and eating their crops. By the 1870s, landowners across Western Victoria and parts of South Australia were building large and long dry stone walls to keep the rabbits out.
Building a wall that was rabbit-proof was quite an exercise because they had to dig down so the rabbits couldn't easily burrow under it.
How successful was that rabbit wall, do you think?
Not really, I don't think. The rabbits would have simply gone around the stony rises. They spread right throughout Australia soon after.
But that's the thing as well. You're building these walls or fences. That's assuming that there's no rabbits underground even on your land already.
In the early 1900s, the rabbit-proof fence was constructed in Western Australia. It was the longest unbroken fence in the world at the time. As the Great Depression hit, rabbit shooting became a national pastime, providing valuable food. Up to 1 million rabbits a year were killed for canning. Tins were sent to servicemen fighting world wars.
That is the only plus side about a species that breeds and mates that much, is that you do then have a plentiful supply of food if you like rabbit. So it's not all bad, right? It's not all bad.
Imagine what it must have been like for some poor young digger from up some of the bad rabbit country in the Mallee who was sitting in the trenches over there and he's handed a tin of canned rabbit. I think that would have been the last straw.
The determination to destroy was as relentless as it was futile. With rabbits able to produce 7 litters a year, they were in plague proportions by the middle of last century, their voracious appetites denuding the landscape, causing erosion, loss of habitat for unique native animals, and forcing farmers off their land.
I do apologise if some of these images are a little bit gruesome for you, but it's interesting to know about, right?
The 1950s saw the first of the biological controls. Myxomatosis was as ugly as it was effective.
Within 3 years of its release in 1950, 90% of Australia's rabbit population had been decimated.
By the 1980s, Myxo was losing its potency, and fleas from Spain were introduced to help spread the disease across the hot inland.
Well, I've had a lot of requests from station owners in the northern areas for rabbit fleas to release.
Dr. Brian Cook later turned his mind to the next biological tool.
At what stage does this just become cruel? They are still living creatures. At what stage does it just, as I said, just become cruel and inhumane? It's a real fine boundary, isn't it? And it's the same with all sort of culling. We've got it with badgers, for example, which is, I don't think is a valid reason for killing them. But yeah, sometimes it doesn't sit well with me. And then sometimes you realise, well, actually it's a must, but cruel. It does seem cruel.
The calicivirus, as it was then known, was trialled on South Australia's Wardang Island, but it unexpectedly found its way to the mainland.
It obviously comes to that point eventually that we ask the question of whether we should be trying to contain it or whether we simply turn around and make the most out of it.
For scientists, it was an embarrassment. For farmers, it was a godsend.
And I remember a story of a fellow near Yunta driving his truck backwards and forwards over a dead rabbit and then driving 50 kilometres up to the road to his property.
A year after the escape, the calicivirus was formally released. Thackaringa Station near Broken Hill has borne witness to the rise and fall of rabbit numbers. I first visited this property in 1995. The 5th generation to farm here, David Lord, was exasperated at the rabbit damage.
Yeah, there's plenty of activity here. As you can see, they're cleaning the burrows out, they're breeding again, there's fur on the ground. Very, very active burrows here.
Within weeks of recording this interview, calicivirus swept through.
Well, here we are a year later, David. Since then, the RCD, rabbit calicivirus, has gone through your property. Now, this is an active warren. Has RCD worked?
Absolutely, yes. There's up to 5, we've seen 5 rabbits here. There would be between 30 and 50 otherwise.
Landline continued to check in on Thackaringa.
So it's 5 years since
Yeah.
RCD went through your property.
Yep.
What are we seeing here?
We're seeing the warren vegetating over with this copperbur, which is pretty typical of around the property. There is evidence of the odd rabbit here, and strangely enough, there's a dead one here.
I'm just struggling for it to sit with me here, and I know, people will be saying that they're pests and they're invasive and they're vermin and all that, but who are we to say what's invasive and what's vermin, and I'm not normally someone that cares that much about these sort of things, but it's just struggling to sit with me. At the end of the day, we could say that we're the pests, the damage that we've done to the environment and to other species, but we're not killing ourselves. And if you think about it, the rabbits haven't technically done anything wrong. They're doing what they're meant to do. Life, there is no meaning of life. Life is about reproducing and putting your genes into something else so it lasts past you, right? That's all that rabbits are doing. That's what we do. That's what all the other animals do. So I feel bad for the rabbits because it's just nature. That is all that it is, you know? And it just so happens that Australia is a giant island that they couldn't get to initially. They don't have the technology like boats and planes like we have. I don't know, it's tough to even think about.
David Lord ripped more than 28,000 warrens to capitalise on the viral opportunity. And 24 years after that first visit, I returned to the Outback Sheep and Cattle Station.
This is the warren where we found the first RC rabbit that died of RCD in 1995, the first confirmed case.
It's a lot more vegetation than I remember.
Yeah, it's huge. We were losing 28 tonnes of vegetation per day.
The landscape of windswept Macquarie Island is so different from the sunburnt plains of inland Australia. But the calicivirus, along with the use of specially trained dogs, has had a profound impact on the ecology.
Can I just say as well, it's funny because Lena, our Jack Russell, Jack Russells are known to be like rat catchers, aren't they? And she would, with her toy, she'll shake it and as if she was killing a rat. If she actually saw a mouse or a rat or anything like that live in person that the cats maybe have brought in, she is the biggest wimp you've ever met. So she would not be like these dogs trying to get into the burrows, trying to get the rabbits or the rats or anything like that.
I think it's incredible. I came down here in 2010 and I could see rabbits on the hillside and a lot of the damage, and now we're still seeing rapid change with increasing tussock coverage on the hillsides, little fungi popping up all over the place, insects, and it's just going to keep going.
In 2015, the sub-Antarctic island of Tasmania became the first jurisdiction in Australia to eradicate rabbits.
And of course, eradication cannot be done by only one method, so it's absolutely essential that the hunters and dog handlers followed up.
Rabbit. In mainland Australia, eradication will never happen. But with the original calicivirus losing its sting because rabbits have developed immunity, the battle to find new viruses continues.
So we brought in 38 variants from Europe and from Asia and really assessed those with the view of trying to select a new strain that was going to have more impact in the wetter, cooler, higher production areas of Australia.
Yeah.
In 2017, the latest weapon was deployed.
Okay.
It was a strain of the rabbit hemorrhagic disease, referred to simply as K5 because it originated in Korea. In a giant citizen science project, virus-laced carrots and grain were released at more than 600 sites across the country.
Yeah, there's certainly an awful lot of interest from the community to participate in the rollout and to provide us with information.
Following the release, spotlight counts helped determine whether it had done its job.
There's one.
Right, we've got some ice shine.
Landline was at the CSIRO in Canberra when the first rabbit to have died from K5 was formally diagnosed.
As you can see, the liver is very pale and yellowish, and this discoloration is usually the telltale sign that this rabbit died from rabbit hemorrhagic disease.
But it became clear while the virus was knocking down about a third of the rabbits at release sites, it wasn't spreading.
So there'll be people who are watching this who say they can still see loads of rabbits on their properties. On the basis of that, was it a success?
I still say yes to that because we've had 2 breeding seasons since the release. A virus is never going to take out every last rabbit, and rabbits, as we know, breed like rabbits. So as soon as there's one, there's many.
K5 is still available and can be distributed to reduce rabbits in specific locations.
Oh, I can see something running across the screen.
Rabbit just ran over.
That was a rabbit, was it? Okay, that's quite exciting really, isn't it?
And the work has already begun to find the next weapon in this never-ending battle against the bunny.
So it's interesting, and I think that's spot on. It's never ending, right? You know, you're not. Look how viruses have affected humans. It's never going to wipe out all of humanity. So therefore, one virus is not going to wipe out all of the rabbits. As I said, look, I've made the point clear that I think it's a tough subject, especially for someone that thinks, well, you know, all life is life, you know, and they're only doing what nature tells them to do. It's a tough one, but yeah, it is going to be a never-ending cycle of trying to find a way to at least manage the population. What are your thoughts? Do you believe there's too many rabbits in Australia? If you're not from Australia, are there any invasive species in your country that you think needs to be sorted out? Let me know in the comments down below, and I'll catch you next time.